I don't recollect a day when I didn't see the ocean or hear its waves crashing on the shore. I can't recollect a day when hardship wasn't a constant companion. And I never recall a day when my dear sister, the noblest and bravest soul I ever knew, wasn't there by my side, giving comfort and guidance. For as long as I remember, these three constants tied my life like a cleat knot to an invisible post, keeping me from drifting into an endless sea of despair. Folks see the ocean as mysterious and romantic, full of adventure with pirates seeking treasure. But for me, the ocean's no more exotic than the sky above. They always called me Mathew, but that name never seemed to fit me quite right, like a little mite in oversized clothes. Maybe this is why my sister Susanah always knew me as her little Matty, but only she called me that. The rest of the world never addressed me much, save for Boris, who called me Rascal. Or when he angry, wretched rascal. And when he was drunk, his cursed burden. From a young age, I remember waking up in the middle of the night, walking up the narrow spiral stairway round and round, hearing the ocean winds as I approached the top of the lighthouse. I was scared to death that when I reached the top, the winds would take me away forever, far from my sister, the only friend I ever had. Every few hours, I'd check the lamp's brightness, ensure the lens was rotating smoothly, keep up the oil levels, and tend to the cleanliness of the lens and windows. For if that light ever went out, Boris said he'd feed me and my sister to an angry sea monster. He scolded. That angry monster is swimming around the island making sure that light up there brightens his harbour. It demands there be light. If the seas should go dark, I reckon it'd want a little recompense. That be a fee for neglecting your duties, you see, and I ain't feeding him my tired bones, but I reckon you and your sister make a bit of a tasty morsel. My older sister also faced hardships. I won't say it was harder or easier for her just 'cause she's a girl, but as her brother, I always looked after her. In truth, she looked after me as well. She supplied me with memories my early childhood lacked. It was she who remembered both of our parents. She recalled when father took off in a fishing boat and was never heard from again. Mother cried desperately when he was declared missing at sea. And Boris came a-courting her in our tiny cottage in the village, and Mum marrying him. Susanah swore Boris wasn't always such an ugly man. I had no picture of my mother, but sister said our mum was beautiful, with long golden hair and blue eyes like the sea. She remembered Boris comforting our mother in her grief, tossing me a ball and giving her a doll. Boris came into our room and promised my mother he would help care for me and my sister. She remembered our mum growing sick and pale and dying, and Boris yelling about how he was forced to raise two little brats, aged 3 and 5, when he was widowed. As for me, I don't remember those early days like my sister did. What I do remember is rarely sleeping and my dreams being filled with monsters coming out of the ocean to devour me. Day after day, we were tired, our labour only interrupted by supply boats that occasionally relieved our joyless toil. Jolly seamen would unload the boat singing songs, and if I was lucky, telling me stories about sea monsters and pirates. Susanah said I was born in the village across the Sound, but I never remember leaving the island. My only possessions were a globe and a picture book about 3 pigs and a wolf. I wondered about the places on that globe, especially the green ones. Were they really green with no blue ocean? I longed to run away with my sister Susanah to one of those green patches. Did scary wolves and scared pigs run around on farms there? In those early days, I often cried, and Susanah would stay by my bed and comfort me. There, she said. Be a good boy, my little Matty. God's angels will protect you. But she did not know I saw her wake up in the middle of the night and cry. I spied her gazing through the round aperture that looked from our tiny bedroom, really a closet, and out to the sea. I saw her cry as she stared at the moon. Maybe she thought the moon was heaven, where angels and our mother dwelled, far away from this cursed island. I hated Boris, not just because he hit me and punished me. I suppose I was a bad boy who often dropped the oil and was negligent in my duties, but because he beat Susanah and made her cry. He only wanted to crush her spirit. Maybe he was saddened about my mother's death. And years later, this is why I thought he hated her so particularly. She had my mother's deep blue eyes and long golden hair. But it is easier to have sympathy for someone when you are not under the belt of their suppression and discipline. Oh, how I hated him. One day, when he was particularly brutal, calling her a no-good wench, just like her mother and just as ugly. I attacked Boris by jumping on his hairy back, but he flung me across the room as if I was a mosquito. He was a big brute of a man with a solid build, thin and black hair and yellow teeth. That day, I determined I would escape with her. I began gathering pieces of driftwood and hid them in a small location on the other side of the island, far away from Boris and his cruel face and rotten teeth. The next day, the supply boat came ashore. A young and vibrant man named Roger stepped off. He seemed to like me and chased me around, pretending to be an evil sea monster. I laughed, and he grabbed me, tossed me in the air, and caught me before I fell. It felt strange, this feeling that I later learned was called having fun. Suddenly, I heard that brutal voice, "Get to work, lazy bones, or you'll feel the wrath of the belt." I ran back to the lighthouse and began my chores. Later, I saw Roger heading back to his boat to leave for the day, and I cried. Why did we not have a father like Roger instead of Boris? A month later, Roger returned, but I was cautious about playing with him. Still, I managed to sneak off and lead him through the brush to the other side of the island, where I showed him the driftwood I'd been collecting. I told Roger I was building a fishing boat. He asked why I did not use my Paul's motorboat, as it was perfect for fishing. I explained I was not permitted to touch that boat. Also, if I were to escape, Boris would hear the motor running. And anyways, I had no idea how to operate such a boat. Roger agreed to help me. When he returned the next month, he brought some tools and planks, and we built a raft together. He used the planks and nails to fasten the driftwood together. We lashed the planks securely with rope to make them stable and sealed the gaps with a pitch to make them watertight. For long, we had a respectable little raft about 6 feet by 4. But he warned me, this is very dangerous. I do not like the idea of you taking this out into the ocean. I'm sure your pa would take you out to sea to fish. I started crying. Please, Roger, can't you take my sister and me off this terrible island? Roger studied my face, observing a blackened eye. Does that hurt? How did you get it? Oh, I fell and hit my head on the stairs. Roger examined me carefully. Please, Roger, take us with you, I pleaded Roger, but laughed nervously. I can't help you, mate. I'm fleeing myself. And I countered, fleeing from what? A sea monster. The sheriff? He exclaimed. From a woman. You don't want to get married? I asked. But Roger said he was in love with the sea, and the sea would always be his true love, and no gal would ever tear his heart from this mysterious woman. At that moment, I thought Roger was even crueler than Boris, for Roger was a decent man and had no reason to abandon me and my sister. That night, Boris proceeded with his usual drinking of hard liquor and singing his sailor songs. Boris screamed at us about how we ruined his life, how our mother had ruined his life, how he had been free and wandered the oceans of the world, and now was confined to this cursed lighthouse, with 2 disrespectful and disobedient little brats running about, ignoring our duties and making his life a living hell. Boris threw the empty bottle at us, just missing my sister, and chased us as we fled into the nearby brush. He grew tired trying to find us in the darkness, returned to the little cottage by the lighthouse, lay on his sofa and drifted asleep. Susanah tried to hide her tears, but they rained down so hard she cried out, "What shall we ever do? Will anyone ever come and save us?" I embraced her, patted her on her shoulder, and comforted her the way she had always comforted me. "Sister, we must escape now." "How, brother? You know Boris keeps the motorboat key locked away in an iron safe." "And even if we did escape, where should we ever go?" I reassured her. "Far from here, far from the sea. To green fields where folks are nice and ain't nobody there ever seen the sea." Susan seemed full of despair, and not knowing what to do, she took my hand and I led her through the brush to the other side of the island, where I showed her the raft. Susanah exclaimed, "A boat? But is it safe? How did you ever procure this vessel?" "Well, my best friend Roger, the brave and handsome seaman, and I built it with the expensive tools he brought from the mainland," I explained. But she queried, "Is it safe?" "I do not know if it can withstand the ocean's ferocious waves." "Sister," I replied, "Roger told me it could withstand a hurricane." "Roger is a great seaman who has sailed all over the mysterious ocean. If anyone knows, he does. Quick!" Let us push it out to sea before Boris wakes and beats us again." I looked into her eyes and surmised they were full of doubt and fear. The island was the only life we had ever known. "You promise it is safe?" she inquired with skepticism. "Susanah, what life do we have here? If the ocean waves take us down to the bottom of the sea, or a shark comes and eats us, will not heaven be waiting for us? Will not our souls drift to the moon where we can see our precious mum again? Let us hurry. Boris may wake any moment." Susanah looked deeply into my eyes. "Here, I will help you." And so, the two of us dragged the boat and 2 handmade paddles to the shore and over the sand. Finally, we pushed the vessel out into the sea and paddled into the dark harbour. As quickly as we entered the water, the waves began battering our raft and taking it out into the open seas. The clouds completely covered the stars, and only the moon shone through and lit the crashing waves about us. How strange it was! I'd never seen the island apart from being on the island. Its shadowy outlines seemed small amid the endless darkness. And the lighthouse, standing like a skinny little lad with one giant eye, cast its beams into the dark, rotating for finding our vessel, shining its light on the 2 of us lost souls. The light frightened Susanah. "It sees us! It sees us!" she cried. "Sister," I reassured her, "Boris is out cold drunk. He won't be waking for hours. We'll be far away down the coast before he notices." Susanah had a look of fear I had never seen in her before. "Susanah, God will protect us." I tried to comfort her. Susanah continued shaking before closing her eyes and praying, "Dear Father, keep us safe. Please let Boris not be so angry when he sees we are gone. Bring him peace and forgive his wretched ways. Give me and little Matty courage, and keep an eye on us. Amen." She reached out, embraced me, and said, "Be strong, little Matty." Let us be strong. We sat in the cold, damp air for hours while the mighty ocean waves tossed our tiny boat. Suddenly, we heard the motorboat roaring across the waters. "You 2 ungrateful little rogues! After all I'd done for you, come back here, or I shall find you, beat you, and feed you to the sea monster." Boris screamed from somewhere in the darkness. We paddled desperately, trying to escape. He was closing in on us when an unexpected wave blew him and his boat completely over, capsizing it. He flailed about in the ocean before stabilizing his powerful frame, and then he commenced to swimming towards our raft and shouting, "Wait till I get my hands on you!" "You just wait." Down below, a massive great white shark opened its jaws, bit him, pulled him under, and we never saw him again. That was the end of Boris and his cruel reign. Susanah cried, "Oh, poor Boris, such an awful way to die." I thought there might be more sharks about us, so I crawled to the middle of the raft, where we clung to each other in the windy, cold, damp air. The spirit of anger possessed me, and I screamed into the dark sea, "I'm glad you're dead, Boris. I hope it was a painful death." "Brother, you must not say such awful things." Susanah scolded and then continued crying. I did not know if she wept in fear or for the death of Boris, but I tried my best to comfort her by patting her on her frail shoulder. I grew sick as the waves rocked our boat about, and I thought of sharks gathering around us or a giant sea monster swallowing our whole boat in one gulp. I looked up at the moon and prayed, "Dear angels in heaven above, please look over us and give us courage, and do not let the sharks and monsters eat us." Susanah held my hand and prayed, "Dear Father, please forgive Boris. He met such a cruel end, and even though he was cruel himself, please have mercy on his soul. Give Mathew and me the courage to face our fears. Amen."